Okay, story time. I had the opportunity to tell a group of adults a couple weeks ago about what I call my miracle day. And this is a day where I almost died. Literally, almost died. And it is a foundational moment in my life where I count every day after that day as a gift and something very, very special. And it drives me. It drives me to be thankful for my wife. It drives me to be thankful for my children. It drives me for every day I get to walk outside and smell either the snow or the warm spring air or anything. So I'm going to tell you about it. I was hunting in 2020 and I got out of my tree stand because there were some branches in the way of where I was hunting. And so usually when I'm in my tree stand, I have a harness on my body and it locks me into the tree. So even if I did fall, I just kind of fall a couple inches. Well, the branches that were in the way were in the next tree over. And I did not have a harness system set up in that tree, but I thought, come on, I've been a kid who's been climbing trees my entire life. I'm going to be pretty good at this. So I took my harness off because it wouldn't work in the next tree over anyways. And I free climbed that tree. And I got up to the branches that were in the way and I just kind of snapped them off by hand. And had one more branch to snap off that would clear my lane and make for clear view and shooting. And then I woke up on the ground. I have no memory of this event of falling out of the tree. I woke up on the ground, laying face down with my arms tucked underneath me like this. And I had a mask on my face. And when I took my mask off, there was a drop of blood right where my nose was. But my nose wasn't bleeding. So there's a ton of weird things that went on with this. I have no memory of falling. I have no memory of snapping the last branch. But as I kind of woke up, I figured I better check my feet because, I know the statistics on hunters who fall out of trees, and I was able to wiggle my toes and wiggle my feet immediately. And so that kind of reduced a little bit of the panic that I had. So I thought, oh gosh, I better get up. And then I realized my left shoulder did not work and caused a lot of pain anytime I tried to move it. And I was tangled up in some bushes. And so I had to use my right arm to kind of push myself and move myself around so I could get up. And once I kind of sat up on my backside, I realized that my left shoulder was in really, really bad shape. And I would kind of reached in underneath my coat and I felt, and I was like, oh, this does not feel like my shoulder should feel. But I was able to walk and move, so I gathered myself. I collected my belongings, my backpack and my hunting rifle, and I walked myself back to my truck. And at that point, I was like, I'm not real sure I can drive in the condition that I'm in. I had, been kind of up on my feet for probably about 10 or 15 minutes at that point. So I knew I was physically, for the most part, I was okay, but I was pretty sure I had a broken shoulder. And so I called my wife and we arranged for me to drive myself home, and then she was going to drive me to the hospital from there. Luckily, I was only about a 20-minute drive from our house. So, long story short, we get into the hospital, we get x-rays. My shoulder is not broken, but it is severely dislocated. And so it took two male doctors, one holding me down and the other one on the floor, pulling my arm down to get it to reset back into my shoulder. Two different attempts and some really good drugs later, it finally popped back in. And the reason I call this my miracle day is any of you who are in hunting communities or have family members who hunt, you probably know the statistics on hunters who fall out of trees and live. And it's really small. There's even a smaller percentage of hunters who fall out of trees and don't wind up paralyzed. Kind of a scary fact about this whole event is I think it was a week or 2 weeks later, my wife was at work and one of her coworkers had a family member who fell out of a tree at half the height that I was at. And he is currently a quadriplegic for life. So I think back to this event and I think, why did I survive? One, why am I not paralyzed? And I didn't require surgery or anything. All they did was they popped my shoulder back into place. And ironically, I hosted a bachelor party for a friend of mine that night at my house. Now, I was in a sling, and the guys kind of were helping out and doing everything that I couldn't do, but like, I hosted a bachelor party at my house that night. And I fell out of a tree like 8 hours prior to that. So I tell you this story partially as, I guess, my own personal testimony, but this is my miracle day. This is something that drives me. This is something that I think about, maybe not every day, but every week I think about that. And when I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling lazy, or I get up and I walk somewhere and I just think, there are a lot of people who don't come out of the woods when they fall out of a tree. There are a lot of people who come out of the woods and are never the same. So when you think about your why you do what you do, why you do what you don't do, because sometimes that's a part of it. Think about what is the biggest event in your life that drives you. Now, prior to that day in 2020, it would not have been anything close to that. But that day is a defining moment in my life. It is a moment that I am grateful for. It is a moment that I still have questions about, because I've gone back and I've hunted very near that same place again. And I found the branch that I was standing on that we think broke while I was standing on it. We found where I landed. Funny note, one of my friends went out there as well and spray painted a chalk outline on the ground, which, well played, Larry, well played. But think about your why. Why is it that you do what you do? Maybe you do what you do for your spouse or your kids or your business, or because you want to make a lot of money, or because you want to be successful, or whatever. Or maybe it's just because you can do it. Maybe it's just because you can do it, and maybe you were in a position where before you might not have been able to do it. So I encourage you, find your why, not just for business, not just for leadership, not just for marriage and parenting or anything else, but find your why that drives you in here. Find your why that wakes you up in the morning. Find your why that drives your life, whether it be your faith, your family, or whatever it is. Find your why and drive into that. Because finding your why will give you meaning and purpose. And I'm going to be a living example as to your why can change sometimes. Sometimes you're doing something for a specific reason or purpose, and then other things come up and your why changes, or your direction changes. And that's okay. And that's okay because now you're just further down the road than you were previously, and things are going to look different. If you've ever been lost, whether it's been driving or hiking or wherever, and you're like, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. If you take a few steps and just get a little further down the road, you will have a different perspective. And oftentimes that different perspective brings clarity. And clarity to your why is huge. So find your why, you will find your purpose, you will find your meaning. And here's a secret, don't tell anybody. It doesn't have to be work related. It doesn't have to be about your career. It can be about just life. And that's okay, because sometimes there's overlap. And your why for life can sometimes drive other things in your life. We'll see you next time.